This is just a quick supplemental review for the cinematic because I was not able to fit in a review or actually finish watching Lover of Men before the last episode. So here is a review of the documentary Lover of Men, which is directed by Sean Peterson. And Lover of Men it's called Lover of Men, subtitle The Untold History of Abraham Lincoln. And if you go look at the posters or any of the promo materials for this, you see it's Abraham Lincoln's face, and they've given him a lightning bolt, very similar to David Bowie on the cover of Aladdin Sane. And obviously they're trying to kind of give him that glitter glam look, which is because the basic premise of this documentary is to discuss the possible gay lifestyle that Lincoln might have been living. Now, I wasn't too aware of this as an ongoing debate, but apparently it's kind of been in the zeitgeist for quite a while. Joseph Bridges had actually mentioned that there's been various versions of this, discredited or credited or whatever, in the last, I don't even know how many years. I guess there's been something going on since early scholarship on Lincoln, but this is obviously coming to a head again with all of the politics around, LGBTQ rights and trans rights and all that stuff has become so charged. It always has been charged, but very charged in the last, 10, 15 years. Anyway, this movie, okay, so as a documentary, so it's going to basically go through kind of the romantic life or the proposed romantic life, especially around possible relationships with men that Lincoln may have had. And it's using anecdotes, and it's using stories, and it's using history of where he lived at various times and whose beds he slept in, which that's a big issue here, is that he's sleeping in same bed with a man various times, certain letters going back and forth, some of the scholarship, even from like Carl Sandburg. There's a kind of little bit of a passage that comes up and all that kind of stuff. The basic concept is that they believe, especially Joshua Speed as one of his quote loves, and they have 3 or 4 other people that I think may have been involved with Lincoln in a romantic way. Now, if you want a hard scientific documentary that's going to prove to you beyond a shadow of a doubt that Lincoln had gay relationships, this documentary is not going to be that. Now, that's where this is kind of a tough documentary. In some ways, it's kind of bad. As far as a documentary about proving that Lincoln had gay relationships or was a gay man, I don't think this is a very good documentary in that aspect. Because, and why do I say that? If you are somebody who just believes beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is revisionist history and this is just woke agenda stuff, and that you know everything you've ever read and have heard about Lincoln, that he was obviously a straight man and that is just outrageous to say he might have been gay, if that is where you're coming from, this does not give you any facts that are going to really prove it to you. Now, if you're on the other side of the fence and you're like, you're sure that Lincoln was gay, there's so much scholarship out there that you believe it, that you have seen these notes and letters and you read the history of, where he slept and when he slept with different men in the same bed, and that this is all just proves it to you that he's obviously gay, you will be convinced by this movie. Now, I don't think that is really the approach to take with this movie. So that might sound weird because it kind of seems like the whole premise of this movie. I think from my point of view, is it plausible that he was gay? Yeah, totally plausible. If you told me any person in the world was, by the way, this person is gay, I would be like, okay, sure. It's plausible. I think it's plausible for anybody to be. And if you're to say someone in politics to the degree of Lincoln, might have been gay and might have not really promoted that in a public way so people knew about it, and that the historians over time who may have had inklings of it might have kept that secret if it were true. Do you think that that's plausible? Well, heck yeah, that's plausible. I mean, look at society now. This is not something that you're going to be shouting from the rooftops, because there's a lot of people that are going to be really, really angry or really upset about it. And they have different reasons to not want it or to want it to be true. So for me, this documentary works best when it is really just really kind of looking at the sexual mores, the fluidity that was much more common than we might think in the 1800s, especially. I would say most of this is about time in the 1800s. It does lean over a little bit into the 20th century, but not too much. Um, I think when this movie is more of kind of a examination of the way that same-sex and LGBTQ kind of relationships were existing in the 1800s, and how they were kind of an open secret to in a lot of ways. Like maybe it wasn't outright promoted or supported. A lot of people knew that it was happening, and it wasn't quite the same. Well, if I'm believing the movie, it wasn't quite the same thing as it is now to society, where I think that by the time you get into the early 20th century, there is a huge stigma. I mean, there was does not say there wasn't a stigma in the 1800s, but this definitely shows you that there was a lot more kind of unspoken acceptance in the 1800s versus what ends up happening, especially in the 30s, 40s, 50s in America and throughout the world in the 1900s. So I think the movie works best when it's that. And I would say a good chunk of this movie is that. I would say throughout the movie, it's kind of half this, you know, looking at what was the possible untold life of Lincoln. And then another half of it is just kind of this overall examination of, like I said, the sexual fluidity and morality of the times, and how that was maybe a little different than we seem to think nowadays. I think it's most effective when it does the overall history, least effective when it tries to do the specific Lincoln stuff. And Lincoln would be a great example in an overall movie with a whole bunch of other examples. Saying that there's rumors of Lincolns and rumors of all these different people throughout history. I think that almost to me would be more effective. But I understand why they're doing this, because it's it's a big headline, it's a graphic image, it's going to you know trigger the heck out of the people that are going to be triggered by this sort of stuff, because they are going to, the anti-woker crowd, the people that are very, very, very concerned about that kind of stuff and think the whole world is going to hell in a handbasket with this sort of stuff, they are going to just think this is the worst thing they've ever seen. They're not going to be convinced, but they're going to be very riled up by it. So in that sense, I guess it's doing its job. Other than that, the way it's made, it's pretty straightforward documentary. It does have some relatively cringy, I guess, reenactments of what might have been the romantic life of Lincoln, and they have these, scenes of him in romantic situations with various different people as they are suspecting it might have happened. That in itself is, there's nothing cringy about that, but the way it's presented is so saccharine, and the music is so sappy. It's like a Hallmark. It's done like a Hallmark Channel thing, which I kind of appreciate, that the chutzpah of that, the cheesiness of that is kind of funny, but at the same time, it kind of works against just kind of the scholarly, serious approach that the movie wants to give you. So I think it's a little bit of a detriment to the overall movie. All that being said, it's, like I said before, not a great scientific study, not a great proof, but a pretty good overview of kind of a world of the 1800s that maybe the average person doesn't have a full perspective on. And in that sense, I appreciate that side of it. So I'm probably going to go 3.5 stars on this. Three and a half. I would say 3.5. I had a good enough time watching it. I did get some pretty good information out of it. Once again, depending on where you come into this movie, how much it angers you or gives you joy will probably vary. And I kind of hopefully set that up enough that you have a good idea of where you would fall on it. I would expect this probably pops up soon on something streaming, and I'm sure that the types that want to get all riled up will get all riled up about this and raise it as example of woke America, whatever. All right, we'll talk to you soon.